Good. And you?
Good, thank you. So let me start in by asking you both, how are things? How's your day-to-day right now?
My day's actually right now peaceful for a little while right now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Have your families kind of settled into a routine? Is it still a little bit chaos?
He's awake.
Monday?
He's awake, the ladybug.
Well, my parents still work, so I have to be at home with my sisters, and there's a routine for me. For myself, I sleep at 10 and wake up at 6:37, and so Emily wakes up the same time I wake up, so like around seven. She will wake up like around 8 or 7:30. So she's got a routine, but my other sisters, they sleep in all night or don't even sleep. So it's crazy, but I'm trying to work it out.
Okay. Sounds nuts. Hi, Emma.
Hello.
How are you today?
All right.
Yeah? That
Yeah.
almost sounded convincing.
Yep. I'm trying to convince myself too.
I know the feeling. Well, we were just talking a little bit about our routines and what's stressful. What's stressing you out these days?
Probably that my grandma's sickness has come to the worst right now.
Does she have COVID?
She has cancer.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Emma. Is she at home or is she in the hospital?
She's at home right now with us. We're taking care of her now.
Okay.
There's like nothing left, so we're just like here with her now.
Yeah, just trying to make her comfortable and let her know that you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep a good thought. I'm sorry to hear that. And if you need anything that we can provide, obviously we're here for you, okay?
Thank you.
Sure. Well, that sounds like a heck of a way to lead into Fahrenheit 451, but maybe a good chase scene is what you need. I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, Montag's on the run, right?
Yeah, I
And
got up yesterday.
yeah. Did you
Mhm.
catch up with us?
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't need a recap, or would you like one?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So Montag almost got run over by a car. And what we talked about at the end of yesterday was that, you know, for all of the challenges that we have and for all of the difficulties that we see in our government or in the coronavirus crisis, there are still these beautiful moments where it's so obvious and so inspiring to see people caring for each other. And in that way, thank goodness, at least at this point in history, Fahrenheit 451 isn't exactly spot on in its predictions, because in that culture, people would see someone crossing the street and actually speed up for sport and see if they could hit him. So Montag escaped that, but he did wonder if they were the ones that killed Clarice, and what he realized was it could have been anybody. But now, after he gasped and got his breath, all of a sudden he realized far down the boulevard, 4 blocks away, the Beetle had slowed, spun about on 2 wheels, and was now racing back, slanting over on the wrong side of the street, picking up speed. They were coming back to try to hit him. But Montag was gone, hidden in the safety of the dark alley for which he had set out on a long journey, an hour, or was it a minute ago? He stood shivering in the night, looking back out as the Beetle ran by and skidded back to the center of the avenue, whirling laughter in the air all about it. Gone. Further on, as Montag moved in darkness, he could see the helicopters falling like the first flakes of snow in the long winter to come. The house was silent. Montag approached from the rear, creeping through a thick, night-moistened scent of daffodils and roses and wet grass. He touched the screen door and back, found it open, slipped in, moved across the porch, listening. Mrs. Black, are you asleep in there? He thought. This isn't good, but your husband did it to others and never asked and never wondered and never worried. And now, since you're a fireman's wife, it's your house and your turn. For all the houses your husband burned and the people he hurt without thinking. The house did not reply. He hid the books in the kitchen and moved from the house again to the alley and looked back, and the house was still dark and quiet, sleeping. On his way across town, with the helicopters fluttering like torn bits of paper in the sky, he phoned the alarm at a lonely phone booth outside a store that was closed for the night. Then he stood in the cold night air, waiting, and at a distance, he heard the fire sirens start up and run, and the salamanders coming, coming to burn Mr. Black's house while he was away at work, to make his wife stand shivering in the morning air while the roof let go and dropped in upon the fire. But now she was still asleep. Good night, Mrs. Black, he thought. So what did Montag just do? Anybody? Okay, so Montag just went to Mrs. Black's house, right? And her husband's a fireman. And he planted a book, and then he called in the alarm. So he basically framed the two people who lived in that house. And now the firemen are on their way to burn that house down, even though Mr. and Mrs. Black didn't actually have a book. And Montag's reason was what? Why did he do this?
Wasn't it because Mr. Black burned other people's houses as well? Was it like payback,
That's
revenge?
exactly right, Emma. So Montag, in his mind, is paying the firemen back for all the harm they did to other people. Faber. Another rap, a whisper, and a long waiting. Excuse me. Then, after a minute, a small light flickered inside Faber's small house. After another pause, the front door opened. They stood looking at each other in the half light, Faber and Montag, as if each did not believe in the other's existence. Then Faber moved and put out his hand and grabbed Montag and moved him in and sat him down and went back and stood in the door, listening. The sirens were wailing off in the morning distance. He came in and shut the door. Montag said, I've been a fool all down the line. I can't stay long. I'm on my way, God knows where. At least you were a fool about the right thing, said Faber. I thought you were dead. The audio capsule I gave you, burnt. I heard the captain talking to you, and suddenly there was nothing. I almost came out looking for you. The captain's dead. He found the audio capsule. He heard your voice. He was going to trace it. I killed him with the flamethrower. Faber sat down and did not speak for a long time. My God, how did this happen? Said Montag. It was only the other night. Everything was fine. And the next thing I know, I'm drowning. How many times can a man go down and still be alive? I can't breathe. There's Beatty dead, and he was my friend once. And there's Millie, gone. I thought she was my wife, but now I don't know. And the house all burnt. And my job gone, and myself on the run, and I planted a book in a fireman's house on the way. Good Christ, the things I've done in a single week. You did what you had to do. It was coming on for a long time. Yes, I believe that. If there's nothing else, I believe. It saved itself up to happen. I could feel it for a long time. I was saving something up. I went around doing one thing and feeling another. God, it was all there. It's a wonder it didn't show on me like fat. And now here I am. I'm messing up your life too. They might follow me here. I feel alive for the first time in years, said Faber. I feel I'm doing what I should have done a lifetime ago. For a little while, I'm not afraid. Maybe it's because I'm doing the right thing at last. Maybe it's because I've done a rash thing and I don't want to look the coward to you. I suppose I'll have to do even more violent things, exposing myself so I won't fall down on the job and turn scared again. What are your plans? To keep running. You know the war's on? I heard. God, isn't it funny, said the old man. It seems so remote because we have our own troubles. Now let me pause there for a second. Are you aware that America's at war? Does anybody? Like today in 2020?
Wasn't it before what happened with I'm not sure if it was Iraq or like around that situation?
Mm-hmm. So most Americans aren't really sure one way or the other. It seems like we are. Is there a war against terrorism? Are we at war in Afghanistan? Is there war against the Taliban or in Iraq or in Iran? We're not even sure anymore because it seems like for so long we've heard stories about combat that we're involved with around the world, but at the same time, especially here in the central coast of California, we're not really feeling like there's a battle. We don't hear explosions. There's not fighter jets flying overhead. So it's easy to feel disconnected, especially when right now everybody's so focused on the coronavirus, economic troubles, dealing with family stuff, just surviving and getting along. And that's kind of what Faber's talking about here. I haven't had time to think. Montag drew $100. I want this to stay with you. Use it in any way that will help when I'm gone. But I might be dead by noon. Use this. Faber nodded. You'd better head for the river if you can. Follow along it. And if you can hit the old railroad lines going out into the country, follow them. Even though practically everything's airborne these days and most of the tracks are abandoned, the rails are still there, rusting. I've heard there are still hobo camps all across the country here and there. Walking camps, they call them. And if you keep walking far enough and keep an eye peeled, they say there's lots of old Harvard degrees on the tracks between here and Los Angeles. Most of them are wanted and hunted in the cities. They survive, I guess. There aren't many of them, and I guess the government's never considered them a great enough danger to go in and track them down. You might hole up with them for a time and get in touch with me in St. Louis. I'm leaving on the 5 a.m. bus this morning to see a retired printer there. I'm getting out in the open myself at last. This money will be to good use. Thanks and God bless you. Do you want to sleep a few minutes? I'd better run. Let's check. Now, before they check, we heard something really interesting in that last paragraph that we haven't heard anywhere else in the book. St. Louis. Do you realize that that's the very first time we heard the name of any city that would locate this story in any country? Did you realize that? I can't see you, so somebody say yes or no.
No.
Okay. The only reference we had to this really being set in America was when Beatty was teaching Montag about the history of the firemen, and he mentioned Benjamin Franklin. Remember that? Does that ring a bell? Yes, no, is anybody there? Okay, good. I see your chat. Thanks, Odalise. So yeah, we really are led to believe that this story could be taking place almost anywhere, except that the flavor of it is very American, and now we finally have the proof. So he says, let's check. He took Montag quickly into the bedroom and lifted a picture frame aside, revealing a television screen the size of a postal card. I always wanted something very small, something I could walk to, something I could blot out with the palm of my hand if necessary, nothing that could shout me down, nothing monstrous big. So you see, he snapped it on. Montag, the TV set said, and lit up. Montag. The name was spelled out by a voice. Guy Montag. Still running. Police helicopters are up. A new mechanical hound has been brought from another district. Montag and Faber looked at each other. Mechanical hound never fails. Never since its first use in tracking quarry has this incredible invention made a mistake. Tonight, this network is proud to have the opportunity to follow the hound by camera helicopter as it starts on its way to the target. Faber poured 2 glasses of whiskey. We'll need these. They drank. Nose so sensitive, the mechanical hound can remember and identify 10,000 odor indexes on 10,000 men without resetting. Faber trembled the least bit and looked about at his house, at the walls, the door, the doorknob, and the chair where Montag now sat. Montag saw the look. They both looked quickly about the house, and Montag felt his nostrils dilate, and he knew that he was trying to track himself, and his nose was suddenly good enough to sense the path he had made in the air of the room, and the sweat of his hand hung from the doorknob. Invisible, but as numerous as the jewels of a small chandelier, he was everywhere, in and on and about everything. He was a luminous cloud, a ghost that made breathing once more impossible. He saw Faber stop up his own breath for fear of drawing that ghost into his own body, perhaps being contaminated with the phantom exhalations and odors of a running man. The mechanical hound is now landing by helicopter at the site of the burning. Now, in this scene, we thought we were going to be hearing the news, right? But the traditional role of the news is to tell us what's new, like what's happened in the world since we last checked. This is following the story in real time. In a way, This is a prediction of what has become reality television. And there on the small screen was the burnt house and the crowd and something with a sheet over it. And out of the sky, fluttering, came the helicopter like a grotesque flower. So they must have their game out, thought Montag. The circus must go on, even with war beginning within the hour. He watched the scene, fascinated, not wanting to move. It seemed so remote and no part of him. It was a play apart and separate, wondrous to watch, not without its strange pleasure. That's all for me, you thought. That's all taking place just for me. By God. If he wished, he could linger here in comfort and follow the entire hunt on through its swift phases, down alleys, across streets, over empty running avenues, crossing lots and playgrounds, with pauses here or there for the necessary commercials, up other alleys to the burning house of Mr. and Mrs. Black, and so on, finally to this house, with Faber and himself seated, drinking, while the electric hounds snuffed about the last trail, silent as a drift of death itself, skidding to a halt outside that window there. Then, if he wished, Montag might rise, walk to the window, keep one eye on the TV screen, open the window, lean out, look back, and see himself dramatized, described, made over, standing there, limned, which means outlined, in the bright small television screen from outside, a drama to be watched objectively, knowing that in other parlors he was large as life, in full color, dimensionally perfect. And, if he kept his eye peeled quickly, he would see himself, an instant before oblivion, being punctured for the benefit of how many civilian parlor sitters who had been wakened from sleep a few minutes ago by the frantic sirening of their living room walls to come watch the big game, the hunt, the one-man carnival. Why do you think the news would want to make this story so important for people? Why would it wake people up and like bring them to see it? Any guesses?
Maybe because they thought like a fireman wouldn't have books, and they see it like as a cool story that they're going against their own job in a way.
That's a great guess, Emma. That's a good point. I hadn't even thought of that one. And okay, to follow that along, what do you think they would want people to know, even for a fireman who is perceived as powerful? What happens if you break the rules?
You will be punished.
Yeah. So when they say the mechanical hound has never been defeated, they want people to like sit up and take notice so that they'll be afraid and they won't do the same thing. Would he have time for a speech? As the hound seized him in view of 10 or 20 or 30 million people, mightn't he sum up his entire life in the last week in one single phrase or a word that would stay with them long after the hound had turned, clenching him in its metal plier jaws and trotting off in darkness, while the camera remained stationary, watching the creature dwindle in the distance, a splendid fade out? What could he say in a single word, a few words, that would sear all their faces and wake them up? There, whispered Faber. Out of a helicopter glided something that was not machine, not animal, not dead, not alive, glowing with a pale green luminosity. It stood near the smoking ruins of Montag's house, and the men brought his discarded flamethrower to it and put it down under the muzzle of the hound. There was a whirring, clicking, humming. Montag shook his head and got up and drank the rest of his drink. It's time. I'm sorry about this. About what? Me, my house? I deserve everything. Run, for God's sake. Perhaps I can delay them here. Wait, there's no use you being discovered. When I leave, burn the spread of this bed that I touched. Burn the chair in the living room, in your wall incinerator. Wipe down the furniture with alcohol. Wipe the doorknobs. Burn the throw rug in the parlor. Turn the air conditioning on full in all the rooms and spray with moth spray if you have it. Then, turn on your lawn sprinklers as high as they'll go and hose off the sidewalks. With any luck at all, we can kill the trail in here anyway. Faber shook his hand. I'll tend to it. Good luck. If we're both in good health next week, the week after, get in touch. General Delivery, St. Louis. I'm sorry there's no way I can go with you this time by earphone. That was good for both of us. But my equipment was limited. You see, I never thought I would use it. What a silly old man. No thought there. Stupid, stupid. So I haven't another green bullet, the right kind, to put in your head. Go now. So even Faber's second guessing himself. Here these guys are taking huge risks and they're being really brave, but they're both wishing that they were better than they are. One last thing, quick. A suitcase. Get it. Fill it with your dirtiest clothes. An old suit, the dirtier the better. A shirt, some old sneakers and socks. Faber was gone and back in a minute. They sealed the cardboard valise with clear tape. To keep the ancient odor of Mr. Faber in, of course, said Faber, sweating at the job. Montag doused the exterior of the valise with whiskey. I don't want that hound picking up two odors at once. May I take this whiskey? I'll need it later. Christ, I hope this works. They shook hands again and going out the door glanced at the TV. The hound was on its way, followed by hovering helicopter cameras, silently, sniffing the great night wind. It was running down the first alley. Goodbye. And Montag was out the door, lightly, running with the half-empty valise. The valise is like a suitcase. Behind him, he heard the lawn sprinkling system jump up, filling the dark air with rain that fell gently, and then with a steady pour all about, washing on the sidewalks and draining into the alley. He carried a few drops of this rain with him on his face. He thought he heard the old man call goodbye, but he wasn't certain. He ran very fast away from the house, down toward the river. Montag ran. He could feel the hound, like autumn come cold and dry and swift, like a wind that didn't stir grass, that didn't jar windows or disturb leaf shadows on the white sidewalks as it passed. The hound did not touch the world. It carried its silence with it, so you could feel the silence building up a pressure behind you all across town. Montag felt the pressure rising and ran. Now, I'm going to read one more paragraph. He stopped for breath on his way to the river to peer through dimly lit windows of vacant houses and saw the silhouettes of people inside watching their parlor walls, and there on the walls the mechanical hound, a breath of neon vapor, spidered along here and gone, now at Elm Terrace, Lincoln, Oak, Park, and up the alley towards Faber's house. Go past, thought Montag. Don't stop. Don't go in. Don't turn in. That's where I'm going to pause. Now, the book's on the website, so if you want to see what happens next, you're welcome to it. But tomorrow, we will see if the hound goes into Faber's house. We will see if the hound catches up with Montag, and we're going to get pretty close to finishing the book, which I'm sure we'll finish early next week. Before we end, does anybody have any questions about anything we read or anything else that's going on? My goodness, you guys are quiet today. Nothing? All right. I know from what we talked about in the beginning of the call that this is a stressful time, and I imagine that there's a little bit of fatigue happening too. So rather than load on any more pressure, I just want to let you know I'm here in support. I care very much. I'm going through it too, and I feel it. And I feel some of your feelings as we're talking. So I'm here if you need me. And in the meantime, I'll put the post up on the blog, and we'll be back here at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Any final thoughts? On that quiet note, have a great day, everybody.
Bye, Mr. Preston. Have a good day.
Thank you, Emma. Bye. And tell your family I'm keeping a good thought. Take care of your grandmother.
Bye, Dr. Preston.
Okay. Bye, Odalise. Bye, Bernadita.
Bye.